Winning in chess, that's what I'm doing on day 66 of my journey to 2000, and I'm going to show you the 2 games I played today. So, it's March 6th, day 66, 666. That's not a great number, but I played 2 really good games. The first game I had 95.3% accuracy, which is super cool. I'm really liking the Vienna. It's just such a cool opening. And my opponent played with 94.6% accuracy, but just leaves. And you'll see what I mean here. Look at all those book moves. I'm actually understanding the concepts here. A lot of times when this knight comes out, you have to play a little differently. But when this knight comes, you can come in with this Vienna gambiting this pawn, and if they accept, you could right away push the knight and blah, blah, blah. We've talked about it before. If you haven't heard it before, then I apologize, but that's how it works. This is the best move to counter it from my understanding, and then you take back attacking the knight here. Knight comes forward, and you don't take. It's important not to take here. I mean, I guess you can. The engine is fine with it. But a lot of times, keeping the tension results in very interesting positions. And here, it looks like the pawn can push and attack the knight, but then you just lose the knight, right, as black. So bringing this knight out is an option to come here, but right away, you bring the bishop to kind of pin the knight to the king, and I knew about that. And the purpose of that is this knight coming in here is actually really annoying because our knight on f3 stops the queen from coming in and checking and is just a really strong knight protecting the center pawn. It could come forward in the future. So we want to pin this knight down and trade if necessary. We castle to put more pressure on the f-file, and he finally attacks our bishop, so we trade. Then we push the pawn forward. This is my first not best move. Apparently moving the knight to the side is better. I don't completely understand why, but I guess so you don't need to trade and ruin your pawn structure is the reason. I don't do that. Instead, I attack the knight, and I take back with this pawn, which I learned to do by making the mistake of not doing that in the past. In the past, I'll take back with the d pawn. I mean, here I can't even take back with the d pawn, so obviously it's the only way to take back. But the point is that you're creating a strong center with the c pawn kind of supporting the d pawn, so I push the pawn forward. And here again, it tells us to move the knight here. I'm guessing to threaten the bishop, to threaten the pawn, to have an open space for the queen. But I just wanted to connect my pawns. Like, I feel like as beginners or early intermediates, whatever you want to call me, you, whatever rating you might be, if you're my rating or lower, I'm 1610 after this game. Whatever your rating is, it's very tempting to just complete a plan to feel secure, right? It feels secure to kind of connect the pawns. Now I don't need to worry about this pawn. This pawn also stops the bishop from coming in. Like if I brought the knight here and the bishop came in, now I have to think about this, and the knight is pinned, and I'm going to be worried about that, even though this is fine, right? There are no issues here. I could unpin myself. If he takes, I could take, and this looks really funny, but it's very similar, right? Like, and again, I would be tempted to push the pawn here, but right away we can make a piece active and attack another piece, forcing the rook to move and kind of controlling the game more. So it's very interesting just trying to understand how the engine thinks, because I feel like stronger players might think in the ways that the engine thinks sometimes. Sometimes, obviously, the engine doesn't think like a real person because it just looks for the best move, but yeah. So here I move my rook here just to gain the open file. He moves his rook. And now I want to develop my bishop, so at the same time, if he takes, I can take back. I also kind of realized back here that the reason, perhaps, for the best move... the best move in a few moves later... Okay. I thought at a certain point is to move the queen out of the... like, forward to connect the rooks, I thought, but not even. But here I bring my bishop out. This is pinning the pawn to the bishop. I mean, it's not that crazy of a move. But after this, I take. And I realize that I recognize my pawns will be split and I'll have tripled pawns. But I am up a pawn, so hopefully that compensates for that. And this is actually kind of interesting. Because the pawns haven't moved yet, they're kind of decently protected here. Now here, I really thought he would take. I thought this would happen. And I was like, this kind of looks annoying. And I didn't really expect this move. And the game would have continued. It's a little hard to determine like how the game would go forward. But when I saw he didn't take my rook, I saw a good time to make my queen active. This also protects the pawn and connects my rook, so my rook can take back and have the open file. So here he comes here, which isn't the greatest move because I can just take, relieving some of the pressure on this pawn, and, you know, possibly creating a passed pawn of my own and breaking open whatever. The engine says to push the pawn forward to stop this pawn from coming in and protecting the b5 pawn. We create a weakness, right? By trading rooks there. Very interesting. I didn't really think of that. And I'm learning more about pawn structures. Actually, if you check the description, you'll see what I've been working on. I've been reading a lot into chess books recently. Got a new chess book. It's really cool. Yusupov or something. And there's just a bunch of exercises. It's difficult. I don't have as much time to go through it right now, but on the weekends I go through it. I'm going to be going through it a bit more. Anyway, I bring the rook here to target the pawn, but he just blocks. And this was a 2-second move, not really a good move. I push this pawn thinking if he takes, which he does, I can take back, and he takes, and even though we're equal now, trading here will fix all my pawn problems, right? Now everything is fixed and the game continues, kind of interestingly. Also, if you notice, the bishop can't target these pawns. This is going to come to c3 soon, and they're all going to be on dark squares, and the rook can stay kind of defending this pawn maybe, and the knight can jump around trying to pick at black's position. So I thought this was pretty decent for me. And I keep trying to trade. And here my opponent resigns. My opponent resigns right here. I have no idea why. I did play very fast because I knew the opening. So I was, you know, I had 7 minutes left. He had 2 minutes, or she. Looks like a he. But he resigned, and it was still a very even game. You know, I expected him to take. Maybe he just really didn't want to take. I take. This is what I expected to happen. And then this, which apparently is not even the best move. Very interestingly, you could just counterattack the knight, which makes a lot of sense. And it would turn into something like this, I guess, which is very interesting. Okay, maybe the pawn doesn't go there. I mean, the king, but the rook would come around, maybe to check, maybe to take the pawns. So, very interesting. Second game here, we have against a 1648. And the game starts in the Sicilian, which I have a really good track record in the Sicilian and Vienna. Those are like my go-to openings as white. Black, I still have to form an opening. I have this opening that I showed you guys the other day, which goes like boop, bop, boop, bop. It's called the boop bop defense. It's called the Nimzo Indian defense. And I haven't studied it enough. Goes something like this, and a lot of times you bring the bishop here, but if he takes control of the full center, you have to play differently. So something like this, and the game continues. I had it in the 3-minute game. I've been playing a little bit of Blitz just for fun. I don't really care. It's just for fun. Like, it's just to test out different ideas. I played it once in a Blitz game, and it didn't go that well. He took full control of the center, and I couldn't counter it very well. But I haven't had it in the rapid game yet. Anyway. People don't play queen's pawn openings as much, I guess. Anyway, here we have the Sicilian, and my opponent takes, which I recognize as a really, really weird move. People don't take in the Sicilian. Again, you keep the tension in a lot of these openings, but people typically don't take. They'll maybe attack the knight right away, asking you if you're going to take. You come here, and they take the cent. Well, actually, no, that looks wrong. They go d6 to prevent you from taking and checking. So this is what happens a lot in the Sicilian. Boom, boom, boom. And it's really frustrating for black to deal with because the queen stops the king from castling and stares at a bunch of things. Now the queen can come here, but you're not forced to trade, but you can trade. Whatever. It's interesting, you know? It's very interesting. That's what usually happens, and I know that to be the book moves. And you could stop that idea by pushing this pawn, because now you're just losing a piece, right? There's two attackers. The queen is able to attack, whereas here it can't. And when the d6 pawn moves forward, for those that don't know, you know, if you just do some random developing move, they can kick out your knight, and your knight is forced backwards, and your knights are going to be in interesting positions, and it becomes an interesting game. Anyway, he didn't do that. He took. So right away I got excited. I'm like, he took! I could do something here. Obviously, I have to take back with the queen. And after this move, which opens up his bishop, I'm like, I have to take advantage of the fact that this king is open. And I can start considering two checks. This check and that check. if you can't see the board and you have no idea what I said, bishop b5 check and the queen a4 check, right? I consider both, and I see with the bishop check that the bishop just blocks, so it doesn't look very appealing. What I don't realize is I could probably even develop my knight. So if he takes, I take back. But the engine says you just take and then develop your knight, and I guess you're up in development, and even though he has this open file, you know, you could target this pawn. If he wants to take advantage of the open file, maybe he pushes the pawn forward, and you have a lead in development here. And very interesting, very, very interesting. So it says this, you look at all your forces coming in. It's still pretty even though, you know. Anyway, I don't do that. I check with the queen, anticipating the bishop block and coming in with the bishop. Okay, now it's saying I should have come here to c3. Okay, the engine is calculating different lines. But regardless, you know, knights and Sicilians are very active. They come here to fork a lot of times. They intimidate the position because the c7 pawn is gone. And it becomes very interesting. Anyway, I come in with this check. Then I come in with the bishop, and I calculate this. I calculate takes, and blocks. And maybe the knight comes out and takes, and then the knight takes, and maybe I'm threatening a fork, and he has to move the rook, and it's going to be a close position. It might be very interesting, right? So I'm anticipating this. I can't take here. If I don't want to take, maybe I come here with my knight. Takes, threatening here. He comes to c8 to prevent it. I could take, and he could take, and the game becomes very, very interesting. Something like this, maybe, right? And obviously, I'm much more like developed than he is. My bishop's ready to come out, but it's not very clear what's going to happen in the game. It's still very, 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 very interesting, I think. Sicilians are very interesting games to me. Anyway, that's not what happens. He develops his knight, which I forgot he has an extra turn to do something. It's just, you know, he develops his knight instead of attacking my bishop right away. And I develop my knight to protect this pawn, because the queen might be moving soon, so it won't be able to protect. Apparently, I didn't need to do that. I could have come here. And after this, probably here. I don't know. The engine will say other stuff. But my bishop's already developed, and maybe this. And it was, again, very interesting game. Not very clear what's going to happen. The ideas behind the Sicilian, I feel like there are so many. I don't know. Anyway, he takes with the knight, and I see his position is so cramped. It looks crazy, so I have to start developing and pushing pieces, so I bring the bishop out. And here it says to bring the bishop here, which I guess makes sense. But I had a plan in mind, and the plan comes into play. You know, the knight becomes active in the Sicilian. I just mentioned that. And this is the exact plan. I realized that if I come here with the knight right away, he can easily kick it out, and now the knight can't move forward with any sort of plan, and I would be forced backwards. So instead of that, I bring the bishop out, because now, if the knight gets attacked, which it does, my opponent is playing super fast, then my bishop can come attacking the queen. And I'm like, there has to be something here. This is such a cool position, you know? Like, what can my opponent do to get out of this? You know, he can't take my bishop because the knight is pinned. I'm threatening to fork and take his rook, potentially. And, I mean, his king is very immobile, right? He moves his queen out of the way. His best move was just moving it to the side. In which case, I probably would have checked. He would have moved the king. Well, that would be bad. That would be a discovered check. He would have moved the king. I would have taken the rook. He would have taken my knight. And I would have been up a rook. Like, this is already beautiful, right? And it's not clear what I would do here. Maybe I would play the move here, because I would recognize I would need to get my other pieces active. But that was his best move. Instead of that, he brings his queen out here. And I'm cognizant of the fact that my knight is hanging. And I'm cognizant of the fact that, you know, potentially he could check in the future. But I still go in with this fork. The coolest thing is, in this game, I literally considered this pawn move. What if I keep kicking the queen around? Do I have more lines to attack the king? I considered this idea, but I didn't go into the deep calculation of where the queen moves after this, because I'm lazy. When I see a queen moving, I'm lazy, because I'm like, the queen can move to so many places, I'm going to miss one of those places. That's not the right mentality to have. I should have calculated everything and considered how the game would evolve and change based off the calculations. I saw this, I was like, okay, he can't go anywhere here. And then I kind of got lazy, and I was like, I'm not going to do that move. Well, apparently black's best move is to take this pawn, in which case you come in with the check, forcing his king to move, right? Because this is still pinned. And here you have to be careful. You have 2 hanging pieces, because now it's no longer pinned. But you can take, knight protecting the queen, forcing to take here, come in with the bishop, take, and then check. And he can't go here because that leads to very nasty stuff. Very nasty stuff. But let's say he does that. And even going here, it's a very similar like idea. You can come here because the queen is pinning the pawn, which I don't think I would have seen. You come here, you come here, you come here. And in a lot of these lines, the queen actually gets taken. So let's say he went here. A lot of these lines, the queen gets taken, right? So I had this crazy thing just moving the king all over the place, but I didn't do the calculations. And I also analyzed like if the queen moved to the side, it would have been interesting as well. I saw this. I think I calculated up to this in the game actually, and I thought, okay, now what? And I didn't recognize the power of this insanity. Like, I just did not recognize the power of that. Very interesting stuff. Oh, but I even get the queen at the end of that line. Because he can't push this forward. He's gonna... Jeez, that's crazy. That's actually insane. It's the only move. It's a forcing move, I think, right? Wow. Anyway, I know I'm getting hung up on this. I just thought it was really, really cool. I bring the knight in, bring the bishop, I fork. I don't take the king. I do attack the queen back. And I castle so my rooks are connected. He could get his rook to safety, which he does. But I thought I can just keep attacking the queen. And I could come in with this bishop and check. Apparently, I ruined my advantage. That's it. I have no advantage. And my best move was to come here and threaten taking the rook. And the game would have continued with some careful stuff, right? That I would have to consider. Anyway. And he would have taken this pawn. The game would have continued. He takes my pawn because he's playing super fast. Look, I have 5 minutes. He has 9 minutes. I take the queen back. He just sacks a queen. And then it's like, I don't need to think much. Let me just go for trades. And I recognize this knight move. I recognize that this knight move comes with a potential fork. But I know my idea is to take with check and then to take with check. And that's it. There's no fork. And he blocks and I take and he resigns because you can't stop mate here, right? If the king moves to this side... You have this. If he goes to the corner, it's... there's an... Okay, that's not good. You lose your queen. But there's a mate, right? I'm not that crazy to miss, like, this advantage. You're up a queen. Anyway, interesting games. Right now, I'm rated 16-19. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. If you watched this far, say box in the comments below. Appreciate it and see you next time. Bye bye.